Ascending of 8. Prologue. The Discworld offers sights far more impressive than those found in universes built by creators with less imagination, but more mechanical aptitude. Although the Disc's sun is but an orbiting moonlet, its prominence is hardly bigger than the croquet hoop, this slight drawback must be set against the tremendous sight of Great Archuin, the turtle, upon whose ancient and meteor-riddled shell the Disc ultimately rests. Sometimes, in his slow journey across the shores of infinity, he moves his country-sized head to snap at a passing comet. But perhaps the most impressive sight of all, if only because most brains, when faced with the sheer galactic enormity of Archuin, refuse to believe it, is the endless rimfall, where the seas of the Disc boil ceaselessly over the edge into space. Or perhaps it is the rainbow, the 8-coloured world-girdling rainbow that hovers in the mist-laden air over the fall. The 8th colour is octarine, caused by the scatter effect of strong sunlight on the intense magical field. Or perhaps, again the most magnificent sight, is the hub, where a spire of green ice 10 miles high rises through the clouds and supports at its peak the realm of Dunder Manifestation, the abode of the Disc gods. The Disc gods themselves, despite the splendour of the world below them, are seldom satisfied. It is embarrassing to know that one is a god of a world that only exists because every improbability curve must have its far end. Especially when one can peer into other dimensions at worlds whose creators had more mechanical aptitude than imagination. No wonder then that the Disc gods spend more time in bickering than in omnicognizance. On this particular day, Blind Io, by dint of constant vigilance, the chief of the gods, sat with his chin in his hand and looked at the gaming board on the red marble table in front of him. Blind Io had got his name because where his eye socket should have been, there were nothing but 2 areas of blank skin. His eyes, of which he had an impressively large number, led a semi-independent life of their own. Several were currently hovering above the table. The gaming board was a carefully carved map of the Discworld, overprinted with squares. A number of beautifully modelled playing pieces were now occupying some of the squares. A human onlooker would, for example, have recognised in 2 of them the likeness of Vard and the Weasel. Others represented yet more heroes and champions, of which the Disc had a more than adequate supply. Still, in the game where Io, Offler the crocodile god, Zephyrus the god of slight breezes, Fate, and the Lady, there was an air of concentration around the board now that the lesser players had been removed from the game. Chance had been an early casualty, running her hero into a full house of armed gnolls, the result of a lucky throw by Offler. And shortly afterwards, Knight had cashed his chips, pleading an appointment with Destiny. Several minor deities had drifted up and were kibitzing over the shoulders of the players. Side bets were made that the Lady would be the next to leave the board. Her last champion of any standing was now a pinch of potash in the ruins of a still-smoking Ankh-Morpork, and there were hardly any pieces that she could promote to first rank. Blind Io took up the dice box, which was a skull, whose various orifices had been stoppered with rubies, and with several of his eyes on the Lady, he rolled 3 5s. She smiled. This was the nature of the Lady's eyes. They were bright green, lacking irises or pupil, and they glowed from within. The room was silent, as she scrabbled for her box of pieces, and, from the very bottom, produced a couple that she set down on the board with 2 decisive clicks. The rest of the players, as one god, craned forward to peer at them. "A renegade Whifford, and from Fort of Clark," said Offler the crocodile god, hindered, as usual, by his tusks. "Well, really." With one claw, he pushed a pile of bone-white tokens onto the centre of the table. The Lady nodded slightly. She picked up the dice cup and held it as steady as a rock, yet all the gods could hear the 3 cubes rattling about inside, and then she sent them bouncing across the table. A 6, a 3, a 5. Something was happening to the 5, however. Battered by the chance collision of several billion molecules, the die flipped onto a point, spun gently, and then came down on a 7. Blind Io picked up the cube and counted the sides. "Come on," he said warily. "Play fair."